Welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where everything we talk about is related to building enduring great companies that grow and succeed for decades, ideally. And that's what we're here to deal with today. I'm Kevin Lawrence with my co-host, Brad Giles. Brad, how you doing today?
Fabulous. Finally, it's starting to cool down in this part of the world. We had our first cool day today. It's been the hottest summer ever. So delighted about that. But outside of that, yeah, I'm doing really good. My new book is progressing well. Hopefully coming out mid-year. How are you doing, Kev?
I'm doing great. As you know, and for us, it's starting to warm up here. And I just came back from Hawaii, which is a very warm place, to give myself an extra boost of warmth. So off some downtime and into the point where we're starting to warm up in our climate, which is nice. Looking forward. It wasn't fun coming back into the cold and the rain. So here in Vancouver is not the most amazing weather right now. That's all right. So what do we got on today?
Today, we are talking about stretch targets. Why stretch targets are garbage.
I love this one.
Yeah, we started throwing around some ideas today to talk about today's episode. And both of us were like, yeah, absolutely. This was like a hell yeah. It was. Hell yeah. There was no debate. There was no discussion. Oh, what about the merits of stretch targets? This was just
because we both messed it up so much. And I remember the juvenile version of myself in my early 20s would do this stuff all the time. And then you wondered why it didn't work. Seems very logical and usually blows up in your face. So we're going to dig into stretch targets being garbage today. But before we do, real quick, word of the day.
Word of the day. Look, it's around behaviors. So I've been doing some work on behaviors as a subset of core values. So just thinking about what are the behaviors that lead to the core values. I've written about in the new book, and I've been doing some work with teams. So yeah, what are the behaviors that we expect of our teams and how do they contribute to our core values? And what about yourself, Kev?
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen some great work done on that where you have the values and then you list a couple of behaviors that show living it, and some cases not living that core value. Really helps to crystallize what it is. I love that. Great thing to do. Mine's also a bit of behavior. It's called drooling. And the value of drooling. And that's like where you're sitting there and saliva sort of starts coming out of your mouth. And I just reminded of the power of drooling when I was on vacation for 10 days because it's almost a reference to relaxing, downtime, recovery time, and just, for people like us that are go, and then some, having what I call drool time is the value of that. So the value of different behaviors, including drooling, is what the theme is today. That's probably not a pretty picture. We should probably move on, Brad. So let's get right into what we're talking about today. And, this garbage called stretch goals.
Hang on. Stretch targets, they're really useful. Like, what are we?
Yeah.
Like, they matter. They make a really big difference to our team. They motivate teams.
They totally do. And it's like, hey, let's aim for the stars and land on the moon. That's how it works. If you don't aim for the stars, you'll never get to the moon. Well, but wait a second. When the US decided that they were going to go to the moon, did they aim for the stars? I think we just had a moment of brilliance there, but that was just a brilliant. I'm quite impressed with myself. But no, they didn't aim for the fucking freaking stars. Bad word, sorry. They didn't aim for the freaking stars and go to the moon. They aimed for the moon and they went to the moon. So we just blew up the whole theory of stretch targets because the people that went or supposedly went to the moon didn't aim for the stars. Isn't that awesome?
No. That is awesome. That is awesome because, it was a clear goal that people knew, people rallied behind for years. They knew when they achieved it and they knew when they didn't achieve it. right?
Yes.
So I guess we've seen enough stretch targets to, I would say, now be able to say that they're garbage, like that they have some real structural problems that I think the two of us are able to defend our perspective. Now, we may not be right in some people's eyes, but, to put it out there and say stretch targets are garbage and here is why, is what we're kind of pushed today.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about that from if NASA in the US just said that we're going to go and have a mission to the stars.
Yeah.
No one would believe it. That's Looney Tunes. They picked a specific thing and aimed for it and rallied people. Now, it was a big goal. But it was a big goal that they knew they could, they believed that they could get to. And that's what we're going to dig into here today. Is, the reason why stretch target, and when I've been involved in them in the past, because I used to be bad at setting them with people that we worked with, is I did think it motivated people and it made them think bigger and it made me feel good. Now, we often do use a stretch target, but it's something that's set 25 plus years in the future, and that's something called a BHAG, as per Jim Collins's thinking and his research. But that's 25 years in the future, and you got time to be able to get there. We're talking about short-term things that people aim for that generally they think is motivational, and often it does the opposite, and it demotivates people, and it takes the wind out of the sails of the organization because they have to keep showing up and saying, we didn't hit it. We didn't hit it. We didn't hit it. And that sense of constantly losing or failing doesn't usually build a lot of motivation in companies. Missing once is one thing versus chronically missing.
I love that moon analogy because it equally, it's clear and everyone can understand it, but equally, imagine if you were in a running race, or even better, a car race, and you said, now I know that the Formula One goes for an hour, let's say, but we're going to aim to go for an hour and 30. It would change your whole plan. You would be like, oh, well, we need this many tires and we need that much fuel and we need to have that many pit stops. And you're preparing for something different. That's right?
You prepare very differently based on if you know your business well and what you're aiming for well.
Yeah.
So look, you might have had success with stretch targets here and there. The challenge is it's generally, and I would call it in my experience earlier in my career, a bit of a juvenile, getting excited and we're going to set something big, and often oversetting it and then disappointing. And not only do you disappoint the people involved in it, you could, disappoint the people that might have benefited from what you were doing, or, if it was a customer or something else like that. So it's just, it's a dangerous territory, and people do it because they think it motivates people. And then actually we believe it does the opposite.
Well, it's a poor motivation tool. There are other motivation tools that are designed or are fit for purpose. This creates massive second order consequences in the organization if you are using stretch targets.
Yes. And as people who have been setting goals with organizations, and, I've done thousands of strategic planning sessions, as you have, Brad, we've learned that's not the way to do it. Now, a little bit later, we'll share a couple techniques if you want to stretch, but stretch targets themselves aren't. And so, a couple of points to remember is the first thing here is that management's job is to accurately predict performance. And it can be both ways. It's like you don't really want to overshoot or you want to undershoot. You're trying to nail what can we achieve that would be hard, but doable. Because if you don't, you create problems with your banks, your shareholders, your employees, your customers, because you're not producing as you said you should. It was really interesting. I had one very successful chairman who owned a number of different businesses, and he would get just as upset when someone overachieved a profit target than when they underachieved a profit target. Because his belief was, look, if you either way, it's mismanagement.
Yeah.
You should know your business and be able to run it well. If they underachieved it, then we know that either they didn't budget right and they didn't do that well, or, they didn't consider all the risks and opportunities, or they didn't run the business well, throughout the year. When they overachieved it, he would almost get more upset Because he's like, and by the way, if they underachieved it, that also means he would have to give them cash, or it wouldn't produce the cash it was supposed to for the mothership. And that affected their investment strategies for other parts of the business. When people would overachieve, first of all, he'd be like, well, not his words, my words, that people were sandbagging. They were undersetting a target so they could easily get their bonus. And the other thing that bothered him was, well, look, if I knew I'd have a number, I'd have an extra 10 or $20 million, I would have made different plans for that capital. Yep. If I knew I would have it, I could have invested it or put it in other businesses or other programs or back into business if I knew I'd have that extra cash. So interesting, first time in my career, I saw he'd be equally frustrated if someone underachieved as if they overachieved, because it's basically mismanagement and potentially screwing up or affecting the balance sheet of the mothership.
Yeah, it demonstrates that you're not in control of the business, that you're kind of rolling the dice, and there isn't a sense of predictability. Now, I understand that some things, happen and some things grow faster, and we're not really talking about that. What we're talking about is this is what we're going to achieve, full stop.
Yes. And we're saying here, we're not saying not to be ambitious, but just make darn sure that you're committed and confident so that you have the determination to deliver. So be ambitious, but be practical about your ambition, and don't say we're going to go to the stars when, getting to the moon would really be the right goal.
Yeah. You've got to be ambitious and confident enough about your business plan that you can lock in an ambitious target.
Yeah. Awesome.
The second thing, is the bipolar sense of having two sets of books. It is, it's so frustrating when people say, so we've got a set of books for the bank and we've got a set of books for the leadership team. It's like, where does that seem like a good idea? It's
right. And to clarify, we're saying set of books as in goals and budgets, not we're hiding cash away from certain people in falsifying books. We're just saying because some companies used to run two sets of books, one for taxes and one for themselves. But this is more of just, two sets of two notably different goals that they're driving to.
And why would you want to have a different set of goals or books or targets for the bank? Because you don't have confidence and you don't have control over what you're executing in the business. And that stems from, again, be ambitious, but be confident in your ambition.
Yeah. And we could argue, and I can think of a couple scenarios where you might give the bank a softer number, right? Like if the business thinks you're going to do 100 million of revenue and you're going to hit 12.5 million of EBITDA, you might go to the bank and say, we expect to produce 10. Like there could be a scenario, especially if you had a couple of rough years, especially if you were just in special accounts and you've had a rough period, you could see the thing. But that's more of maybe something the CFO manages with the banks. Everyone else isn't involved in that. That's not a discussion. There's one number within the company. We might just do some relationship management. So we're not saying not to do relationship management if you have to set an expectation. It's just some companies will run two different budgets and have two different versions, which becomes confusing. And it's like, okay, what's the goal then?
Yeah, it's like having a car race where you've got two finish lines. Yeah. It's you don't watch the Formula Ones and they say, well, this is the finish line, but then there's another finish line.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all. We want to have one direction, one goal, because when we've got two different goals, it can have such negative second order consequences. It can be really demotivating for A players. A players want to win. They have that innate sense. They have a need to win, and we've got to align ourselves around that need and give them the real clear sense of winning. Having a stretch target, it's kind of like it's a bit of a fake one, a bit of a fake win if we get to the original, the non-stretch goal.
Right, because there was a better goal versus if you could achieve it and you got it. There's a lot of psychology in it. So having two sets of books is confusing, as we've talked about, and it can set up all kinds of weird psychology. So if you have to do some relationship management, do. But for everyone in the company, we're thinking about one goal, one number. The third thing is the success builds confidence, and that's the main thing. I mean, how do you get young kids comfortable doing things like riding a bike, right? You don't take the kid when they're learning how to ride the bike, take them up to the top of the hill and just let them go and see what happens. We know not to do that. You do little things. First, you hold the seat and run behind them, for all of us that have taught kids to ride a bike. And then you've got, sometimes they have bikes without training wheels where they just use their legs, or sometimes you have the old pedal bikes and you got training wheels, and then you gradually loosen the wheels and then you let the kid ride up and down the curb. Like there's like a 14-step process to getting a kid confident to riding a bike. And then if something happens and it doesn't work, you kind of got to restart it. We know that. And by the way, adults aren't that different than kids, right? Except for the things, the riding the bike, we already have confidence. Although a couple of good crashes might shake someone's confidence a little bit. But the point of it is that that confidence and momentum you get from constantly achieving helps you a lot. And not achieving and constantly failing takes it the other way. It makes people doubt themselves, makes people more unsure of themselves, which can often lead to lower performance.
Success builds confidence. That's the key point that you're making, right? Because if we have said for the last, let's say 10 quarters that we're going to achieve X, and give or take, we've achieved X, we've got a great deal of confidence in ourselves to accurately set the next quarter's goals, and that we can achieve those given all of the corporate memory that we've developed over time. Yeah.
So number 4 is that actually failure is valuable. Real failure, real failure from a real solid goal, because, once it's a solid goal that you aim for, and it can build motivation, it can build learning, it can build growth. But if you've got a whole bunch of different goals and you're not fully committed, or you're not sure what you're committed to, you often miss out on some of that failure that you get by having a solitary obsession.
Failure, no one learns from success. People only
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, success is a lousy teacher. I think it might have been Bill Gates that said that. Success is a lousy teacher, right? We will learn from failure. So we've got to embrace the learnings of the team that will come from failure, and setting these kind of these bipolar goals, these stretch targets where we're still winning if we do 100, but we're really winning if we get to 125. Like, where is the failure in that? Knowing that we get the learning and the growth out of that is what really matters.
Yep. Awesome.
Moving on, the 5th one is we might need more time to debate and land on a solid target. So it might take a little bit more time for us to be able to decide on what it is. And there may be a bit of risk in that, but the depth in planning that we get, like the value that the team gets from being able to set the goals and execute the goals and succeed when we have one goal, it makes a huge difference to the team and their confidence moving forward.
Yeah, and if you look at just getting a budget right, whether it's a budget or goals, either way, there's a great exercise of risks and opportunities. Based on the goal, here's a list of all the risks and how it'll affect the project, whether it's in terms of time or money. And here's all the opportunities and all the things that could go our way and it would benefit us in terms of time and money. And we've gone and done that in companies. It's a lot more work. But you then start to look at, okay, well, if we've got 6 million of bottom line risk and 6 million of opportunity, and we look at it and go, they're all fairly, we could see how that solid list, you could almost say that your $12.5 million budget is realistic, right? Because you got 6 things that $6 million could go the wrong way and 6 million to go the right way. We've probably got a good number. You ended up with 20 million that could go the right way and 100 million to go the wrong way, which wouldn't happen on that P&L, but 10 million that could go the right way and 2 million that could go the wrong way. You might pick a higher number, or you might feel very secure in it. The point of it is more deeper debate, and getting a budget right is hard, really, really, really hard. And it takes time, and maybe you need more time on whatever it happens to be. Even in our strat planning sessions, we often don't have enough time to debate these things. Often we'll say, okay, either people do prep in advance on numbers and preparing them, or maybe they need a week after to go and crunch and get down to final numbers, just so that we can lock down on it and lock hard.
This is what we're going to do, full stop. Like, that's what we want. We want that confidence because of the prep before and after, as you just, like, I'm doing both with teams. We want that confidence. This is what we're going to do. And we become an execution machine. Like, we just execute really, really well consistently and build the confidence. Because like we alluded to this, or we said this before, one of the worst things, a quick story, I had a sales manager, and the sales manager was in love with stretch targets. This sales manager would go out and would always set these outrageous sales targets, and over multiple years had never come anywhere close to any of them, and didn't really even, he would call it a stretch target and then didn't have any like normal target. And so he was wedded to it. And he's like, it motivates the sales team. It gets them to work so much harder. And I said, do you realize that your CEO has to stand up in front of the board every quarter and explain to the board why we didn't hit the numbers and why they're so far off? And what do you think that does to the confidence in them, in the CEO? Like, it's eroding it every single time.
Yep. Good fun. So finally, it just violates Collins's 20-mile march. Collins's 20-mile march is, through his research in the book Great by Choice, is about finding a minimum and maximum amount that you're going to grow, so you have steady, consistent growth of your company, and you don't have juvenile, insanely explosive growth followed by insanely implosive periods of time where things don't go well. It's just solid, steady, and he found in his research, enduring great companies had solid, consistent growth, not doing too much, not doing too little. And so that, what we're talking about here is stretch targets violate the principle that Mr. Collins has figured out is the right way to build enduring great companies. And he seems to have done very well with all of his principles, hold up very, very well in the clients we work with. The bonus, though, we got a little bonus one here, Brad. And that's like, okay, yes, I know. But for those of you that want to be able to stretch a little bit, there is something that we have seen work, and we're not going to argue against ourselves. We're just going to give you another little thought here, which is, having a set goal and then saying that we're going to go and push past it to see what we could do. You can do that. Now, got to be careful. That could be, according to Collins's 20-mile march, there could be some danger in that. But we're human. You don't have to be, these things are principles. But one thing you can do is just sort of say, okay, we're going to hit our 12.5 million profit target, and we're going to continue to push, right? It's still 12.5. You don't say, well, we could do 12.5, we could do 15. And you could, there are some frameworks for that, but it's like, we're aiming for 12.5. You might have in your mind, I think we can exceed it, team. Let's try and push past it. But that way, when you get 12.5, you're still happy. And there is a model we use sometimes that allows us to set an overachievement goal, but the goal is still the goal, i.e. 12.5 is a goal we know we can achieve. Our risks and opportunities have confirmed that we can. And we might do something awesome if we get to 13 million or 14 million or whatever it happens to be. but it's no matter what, the 12.5 is a solid goal that we know we can achieve, and it's healthy for the business. We just leave room to do more.
Then what happens next quarter? So we get to the next quarter and it's time to set the goals. Like, we up the budget. If we're able to achieve more, like, we want confidence in what we can do. So I'm not saying in your example it should be 14 million, but we recalibrate and every quarter, and we recalibrate and we recalibrate. We don't push the team to breaking by any means. We want to have achievable, ambitious goals that we're confident in.
Yeah. And it's great to overachieve sometimes. You just got to be careful with it. You don't want to get too greedy and make a bigger mess of it. Awesome. So there, let's quickly do a review of the 7. I'll do the first 3 there, Brad. You do the final 4. Management's job is to accurately predict performance, not too low, not too high, but try and hit the numbers you want to achieve or you commit to doing. And it's still being ambitious, but it's ambitious knowing that you can win and not overstretching it to things just to think it's going to motivate people. Secondly, having 2 sets of books, meaning 2 different numbers you're aiming for, a conservative target and then an aggressive target. It gets confusing to people. Try and pick one. You know, the F1 race doesn't have 2 finish lines. And success builds confidence. It's continually achieving. I mean, it helps to build momentum and confidence and strength and aligns teams. And great things come when people are confident and believe they can do things.
Number 4, pardon me, real failure. So failure matters. People don't learn from success. People learn from failure. So it's okay if the team fails, provided that they learn. And when you've got ambiguous targets, people aren't really failing and they aren't really learning. The next one, we need to spend more time when we have only one target, but that's okay because it helps the team to become better at executing. And then number 6, it violates Jim Collins' 20-mile march rule, which is about consistency. We're not going to do 20 miles one day and then 35 the next when the conditions are better. We're going to do 20 miles and we're going to be consistent about that. So that covers why stretch targets are garbage. Maybe you've got a different perspective, but our experience, I guess, unanimously landed us on let's be confident in what we're trying to achieve. Thank you, Kev. It's been a pleasure today. And if you'd like to see the YouTube video, you can go to youtube.com, search for the Growth Whisperers. You can find Kevin at lawrenceandco.com. And you can find myself, Brad, at evolutionpartners.com.au. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Look forward to chatting to you again next week. Do enjoy your week. Take care.
Have a great one.